Good afternoon everyone, it's Kay here from sunny Taunton. I'm holding in my hand another of the decorative Christmas baubles, and as promised I have come back to hopefully show you how to go about decorating one of these Christmas baubles. It will be the basic netting, and I will of course show you how to make additions like these little dangly bits on the bottom, but at the end of the day, once you've got the netting in place, you can actually do whatever you like on the bottom, use whatever you've got to hand just to finish the detail on the bauble. This is a 60mm bauble, and that size is quite important because that is what all the bead structure is measured around, if that makes sense. So were you to have a larger bauble or indeed a smaller bauble, then you would have to cut the cloth accordingly, because everything has to fit around this little top bit of the bauble where you would hang it on the tree. Otherwise it's not going to work for you. So that said, I'll put this on the stand. I'll get the film crew just to give you a little look again at the baubles that we've shown before. Thank you very much for the lovely response. It was quite surprising that so many people found these so intriguing. I'll just do a little turnaround very gently so that you can see what we've done between us, the film crew and I. I'm going to come back round to the gold because this is the one that I will hopefully show you how to do today, or something very similar anyway. To get started, whether you are a beader or not, you need something to bead from. I'm using this bead mat, and basically all that does is give somewhere for the beads to nestle without them running around all over the place whilst you're trying to work. I have another 60mm bauble, and I actually got this in a charity shop, and it was only 10p. But because it's quite plain, I'm hoping it will lend itself quite nicely to the process. I've got two colours of size 11 seed beads. I've opted for black and white in the hope that you will see very clearly what I'm doing. I also am using these beautiful teardrop pearls and these 4mm bicone crystals for the little dangly bit on the bottom of the bauble decoration. I am using this Spectra Extreme braid. Now this is the equivalent to the likes of the Fireline, but this is a very much cheaper version. There are several mediums you can use for beading. Nymo is one, KO is another. This Fireline, and this particular, it's fishing line actually, line has been pre-treated, so you don't have to worry about it stretching once you've got your beads in situ, because it's surprising how much weight these little bead covers amount to when they're complete. If you use KO or Nymo, then you would actually need to treat with a wax to condition your thread before you start. As I say, this is pre-treated, and it's the equivalent of a £6, I'm hoping you can pick that up, a £6 weight, which lends itself beautifully to being passed repeatedly through the smaller seed beads. It's got a very, very strong lifetime to it, so it's not going to rot and break down between Christmases, and in my opinion is a very, very good thing to use for this kind of project. You will also need a size 10 or 11 beading needle. Now this is a very, very fine beading needle, and it needs to be this fine because obviously it has to pass through the very, very tiny hole in the size 11 seed beads. I'm using size 11. If you wanted to use a larger seed bead, then of course that's entirely up to you, but again you would have to adjust and make amendments to what I'm saying today. There are several bead needles available on the market. I'm using that one, but I have also used in the past, because my eyes really aren't very good, this large-eyed needle. So if you have problems threading needles and so on, this just separates, lets you put the thread in, and providing you take it to one end or the other of the needle, then it will sit there like an ordinary traditionally threaded needle and allow you to work quite safely. The thing to remember with these wide-eyed needles is that both ends by design are really quite sharp, and you can give yourself a nasty little injury with them when you're using them, so that's something else to bear in mind. But it's out there, it's available, they're not very expensive. I think you can get them on either Sanctuary Beads or gjbeads in this country quite reasonably. I will put some web links in at the bottom of the video so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about in the comfort of your own homes, so to speak. Now, as I said, I'm using the size 11 black as my main colour. These are a matte black, and hopefully you can see just how very tiny they are, and also a pearlized white, in the hope that you will be able to see the contrast as the project comes into being. Now you need to make the whole project, I'll start from the beginning, the 60mm round bauble, 20 grams of 11O seed beads for your main colour, and then 10 grams of 11O seed beads for your contrast colour. Now I would say to you, if you want things to come out uniformly, don't use the cheaper of the seed beads, the check seed beads, because they are very much at odds size wise. If you're prepared to pick through and pick up beads of the same size, then use them and you will get a good result from them. But they are not uniform in size. The only thing they lay claim to is the circumference of the bead being the size 11O and the hole in the bead, but they could actually be as much as a millimetre larger in some of the cases. You need your needle, you need your thread, a mat and a sharp pair of scissors. So that said, we'll start with the patterning. And this is a very, very simple pattern to do. You start off with 2 of your main colour, 1 of your contrast colour, and you repeat that process 14 times. So there's 1, pick up 2 of the main, 1 of the white, 2 of the main, 1 of the white, 2 and 1, 2 and 1. I'm sorry we don't have any fast forward process. Do feel free to skip along because this does take a little while, but as I hoped, you can see the pattern, the base pattern starting to come together here as I work. 2, 1, 2 and 1, whoops, 2 white ones. You can see very clearly if you use strongly contrasting colours that whether you are headed in the right direction or not, and that gives you then the facility to take down or take back what you've done to put in any corrections, which is always a nice thing to be able to do. Now this bit I'm doing is actually forming the top that fits around the neck of the bauble. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and one more is 14. Now you want to be sure that you are actually in the right size. Now I would say, holding this up to the bauble, that this is one set of beads too big. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to unthread my needle, but I'm going to take one set off simply by going back through the beads very carefully and pulling off the ones that I no longer need to be there. You then take this set of beads down to the bottom or the tail of your thread, and if you can anchor the beads down, it makes it very easy then. By making a circle, you are taking your thread around down to the bottom first bead, and then you are threading right the way back up through all the beads that you have on your thread. And this is quite important, because this is the only thing that is keeping your bauble and all its workings safe. So to make it a double thickness of thread is actually quite important at this stage. I'm still working my way through, and there we have it. And then all you do is pull very tightly until you get your circle formed. Slide it down toward the end of the thread as far as you can, and it will let you do that with a little bit of tension. Don't overdo it, because you don't want to unthread what you've achieved so far. And then you tie a double knot. So that's one knot. Oops. Put it very, very tightly as you can, and a double knot, and then you'll see that your knot comes out at one of the contrasting beads. I'm hoping that this is clear for you. So if you tuck that tail out of the way, put your needle through the contrasting coloured bead and pull tightly, that actually makes sure that the knot that you've just made lies within that bead. You are then safe to, what do I do with my scissors, to cut off the little tail so it doesn't get in the way of the rest of your work. And you'll see that you have a very nice, very neat little circle here to start the next bit of your pattern from. I'll just turn my little notes over here. Right. Now you pick up, you're coming out of the contrast, the white, or in this case the white bead, and you're going to pick up 5 main colour. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 contrasting colour, and you're going to repeat that 9 times. So that's 1, 2, picked up too many there. 3, 5. If you keep your beads on the needle, you can actually just count them whilst they're in place before you add them to the main body of your work, and then should you have to take anything off because you've overcounted, you have the facility to do so without having to thread back through your beads. I've got a nice long bit of thread here. My advice would be to work with a length of thread that is comfortable to you, bearing in mind that you can have a long tail running alongside the main piece of thread that you're working with, and just extend that as you go along, because if it gets knotted, this stuff is frightful to try and put right. It really is. I usually have to ask the film crew to undo it for me because it really does knot up really tightly, as you can imagine. It's a very fine thread, and it has to, when it knots, it really does knot. How many have we got there? I'm chatting away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2 more to do. 3, 4, 5. The easy thing about this pattern, it is all 5 and 1. You don't have to, until you get down to the dangly bit at the bottom, the mainstay is all 5 and 1, which keeps it quite simple once you've done any fussy bits to make the dangle. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is my 9. So what I'm going to do now is put on 3 of the contrast. This is to make the finish at the bottom. A white, 3 of the contrast, 3 of the mains, sorry. So you've got 6 beads there in addition to the 9. I'll keep them separate. Then I'm going to take 5 of the white, and this acts as the dingle dangle bit. 3 of the black. I'm then going to thread on my teardrop. 1 of the 4mm bicone. 1 black seed bead. Now if I leave this dangly bit separate to the main body of work like this, you'll see where I'm headed. This little black seed bead here I'm now going to ignore, because that will act as an anchor to the teardrop. So I'm going to pass my needle back up through the bicone, back up through the teardrop, very simply, and that allows you this little dangly bit on the bottom of your work. At this point we do need to bring all of this up to the main body of the work, and all you do then is repeat, except for the 5 contrasting colours, the pattern. So we start with 3 of the main colour. We then go back up through. You can loosen it off if you need to at this point. You then need to go back through the 5 contrasting colours, because we only want 1 thread at that point leading down to the teardrop. Pull it tight, and it does need to be tight, because what you want to form here is a little double locket, if you like, to keep the teardrop bit safe. I hope this is making sense. Then you want another 3 of the main colour. This time you're going back up through the 1 contrasting colour. So you've got 6 beads, 5 contrast and 6 bead leading down to the teardrop aspect. Then we want another 3 beads and do the same again back into the contrast. Because this is quite a large bead at the bottom, it needs that little bit extra leading up to it. You can pull your work around at this point. Make sure that it's nice and neat and tidy before you start on to the netting aspect of the bauble. So keeping your thread always on the right side or on the left side if you're left-handed. We now start to incorporate the netting of which holds the body of the bauble, which amounts to 5 contrast beads, 1 white bead. We miss 1 white bead in this tail, and we pick up another 5 main colour beads, I do beg your pardon. So we miss a white and we go to the second white in the row. We go up through, and there you have the loop, which when it is pulled onto the bauble becomes this netted affair, but I'll do a bit more and then you can see where I'm headed. So we want another 5 main, a contrast, 5 main, we miss a contrast and we go into the second contrast, and we're working up now because this pattern actually goes from top to bottom all the way around, so we're working up to the loop at the top of the work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a contrast, 5 main, 2, 3, 4, 5. We miss the contrast bead and go into the second contrast bead. Be quite firm as you're pulling the beads up through, because whilst you want a little bit of movement there to hide the thread, you need to pull it reasonably tight. Then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main, 1 white, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main. We go into the second contrasting bead, and now there is only 5 beads before we get up to the main loop that's holding the whole thing together. So we pick up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main beads. We go into and through the next main bead in the loop, and we come out through the contrasting bead next in line, and it really is as straightforward as that. I'll do one more row and then show you a diagram that I've come up with in the hope that it will explain what's happening here, and then we'll have a break and I'll come back with part 2, because I'm sure you don't want to sit here watching this come together. So 3, 4, 5 contrast. We're missing that next contrasting bead, 5 main. We are picking up a contrast, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main, so we're missing the first white and we're going into the second contrasting bead. And at this point again, you do need to pull your work quite tightly to make sure that it stays where you want it to be. And we are doing exactly the same thing again. 5 main, 1 contrast, 5 main, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are missing the bead that was worked through previously and going into the second contrast colour en route down to the next bauble. And if I separate it, you can see what's evolving here. It really is quite a pretty design. Back to the main colour, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and a contrast, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are missing the contrasting bead that we worked through on the way up, and we are going through the second contrasting bead, working our way down, and again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, contrast, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to go through the second bead, not the one that was worked before, the second contrast bead on the way down. Now we are about to embark. If you watch your work as you go along, once that first bauble pattern is set, you literally just copy that again. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we want the contrasting colour, and then we want 1, 2, 3, and a contrasting colour, 1, 2, 3. That brings us down to the 5 of the contrasting, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then we want 3 of the main colour. We are then going up through the teardrop. We are adding a 4mm bicone crystal. We want 1 of the main colours, and there is our dangle pattern on the bottom again. I'll just loosen this thread off, like so. Now I'm going to ignore the last main colour, go back up through the bicone, back up through the teardrop, pull it tight, and you can already see once you've got it in front of you, it becomes very clear what you have to do next, which is 3 main, up through the 5 contrasting colours, and at this point you start to pull your work tight again, 3 main, through the next contrasting bead as it stands alone, pull it tight, 3 main, up through the main bead, the contrasting bead, and then we start again en route up to the top circle, which I will do, and then we will break off at that point, and then you can see the 2 rows coming together again. So it's 5 main, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 contrast, 5 main, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are missing the previous contrasting bead that was worked, and we are going to the second contrast bead in the row, pulling tight, and again 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, one contrast, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, not the bead that was worked previously, so we miss a contrasting bead and we go up through the second bead in the row, the contrasting bead. I think I'm pushing my mat closer and closer. I hope I'm still in shot. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 1 contrast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we go to the second contrasting bead, missing the first. And again, by this time, if you want to hold your work like this, it does make it easier. I was trying to leave it on the mat so that you could see where I was going. 2, 3, 4, 5, one contrast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We miss the first contrasting bead, go into the second, and that then is our next step up into the hoop again. So we are going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and up into the hoop that you made at the very beginning, through the two main colours and coming out at the contrasting colour. Now if I pop this onto the bauble at the top and hold it on, you can see that the pattern is starting to evolve. So I hope that makes sense. We'll break off now. Well, I'll just show you the little design thing that I hope will help. It all comes out in this format. So there are your 5 beads to start off with your contrasting at the 5th bead on each centre. Whatever dangle you decide to put on the bottom, and as you work through these, I mean, this is my own design that I've come up with here. You really can utilise whatever you've got to hand. Then you come up the other side. Always your contrasting beads will be in the same place. Then you are going through the centre bead each time to form the triangle to bring you back up to the main hoop that you made at the very beginning. So I hope that's very clear. I'm going to now continue with this and put on the remainder of the strands, which will be between 13 and 14 dangles. If you look at it from the dangle point of view, that is what's required to cover the whole bauble. So I hope this is making sense. Please feel free to ask any questions and I will try to make clear what it is you're not understanding, and in part 2 there will be another graph like this showing a bit more of how the actual netting comes into play. Thank you for watching. See you in part 2. Bye bye.